Welcome back, Officers Republics. Your Coruscant Underworld Police Chief APGAINS. So, just for some context, there are galactic legends, and then there are non-galactic legends, and generally speaking, galactic legends is better. So, they're not going to be discussed in this video at all, but we all know that there are certain teams that are just way more powerful than everything else, but there are new teams being added to that list every time something changes, every time, I hate to say this, datacrons fall off, every time something happens in the game. We get an opportunity to add new fantastic teams that are going to help us in our quest to punch up in Grand Arena against these dirty goddamn whales that are always somehow 3 million GP more than us. They always have 2 to 3, 4 more galactic legends than us. I don't know how it does. Money-based matchmaking will never make sense to me, but here are the teams and the new teams that are going to help you dominate the whales and win more Grand Arenas. So everyone knows the concepts of the core teams and the auxiliary teams and the backbone teams and all that stuff. So we're going to go over really quickly the existing backbone teams, backbone meaning they're just the upper echelon of teams. Usually they require more investment, but they have the potential to beat GLs on offense, defense, and also throw a wrench in entire GAC strategies. So the ones that you guys are well aware of, we're going to skip through them really quickly, not to waste too much time. And then the 2 or 3 of them that are getting added there at the bottom, we'll make sure to cover. And a ceremonial sacrifice, one of them is being absolutely karate chopped off the list. To start off with, I mean, this is obvious. Muldalorians have always been good, will always be good. They occasionally catch a good Datacron, whether you get a bounty hunter or a Mandalorian or, you know, something like a scoundrel or something like that. They occasionally catch a good Datacron, but I'm not going to consider Datacrons in this video at all. So if there's a current Datacron that really makes this team above and beyond, and we'll talk about a couple of examples, that's fantastic. But we're realistically talking about what can they accomplish sans Datacrons, without any Datacrons equipped, because I don't use them, and I know you guys probably don't as well. This team can occasionally fuck up a JML or something like that, but realistically, you're going to put it on defense, and it's going to really, really bother your opponent and force them to draw something they weren't planning on using. Because as weird as it sounds, a lot of people in the, you know, bottom, like Erodium, lower Erodium to like mid Kyber 3 don't use or have this team even activated, let alone like full R5 or R7 or whatever the bullshit standard is for these people who use Datacrons. They just don't have this team. So it's a team that they don't practice a bunch, but it's also a team that is strong enough under gear that you can catch a lot of people off guards. Starkiller, this one's obvious. He's accelerated. He's one of the best value farms in the game if you're trying to get your roster wider as opposed to taller. He gives you some height, but realistically, it's about quickly getting a really strong backbone team. Everyone knows that you can beat your Rays, you can throw it on defense. The defensive thing is kind of sketch because he's very easily countered by General Grievuses. So I've still been putting him on defense, to be perfectly honest with you. I'll occasionally look through my opponent's GAC history to see if they save Grievous for offense. Most times they put him on defense. I'm like, okay, this is cool. You can throw a Starkiller on defense. There are some counters. But you can pull out some really good stuff. So you're still going to get a ton of value here. Plus, you get a flex GL counter if you see that they have a Ray that they love to put on defense and your other Ray counters don't seem to work. He's definitely fantastic. Malgus, this one's obvious, especially now that, you know, Revan and Malak are going to be R9 for a lot of people. I plugged in Marauder. We used to have Talon here because I just needed a Relic 5 Sith character for his leadership ability. You could throw an Assassin, you can throw in Sith Empire Trooper, you can throw in Marauder. It doesn't really matter. This team is going to, he's going to eat the breakfast of any light side character. But putting on defense, this consistently gets you at least one hold. Like, I would say 70% of the time, if you're outside of Kyber 2 and Kyber 1, you're going to get a hold with Malgus being the last remaining person. And then they're going to go in with some sort of Annihilate and either clean them up or drop the battle and just get fucked. So, one of, if not the best teams in the game that is not a Galactic Legend. I think he should have been a Galactic Legend at this point with the way his kid is. God forbid the Sith Empire ever get another, or the Sith or a Sith Empire ever get another Omicron. I don't think this team will ever lose on defense. Radis, this is the most controversial one, but I like to use this as an example of the range that the backbone teams can have, right? We're going to approach the newer teams here at the end, but to show the range, because there's this concept called the Admiral Akbar concept where you can get massive defensive value. And yes, this team is actually great for offense. You can mess up a whole lot of stuff with this team on offense, but I'm not going to talk about the offensive potential. The Admiral Akbar principle, philosophy, strategy, whatever it might be, essentially dictates that if your opponent goes against a mechanic that they are not aware of, either because it's not something they see or something that they're just not smart enough to figure out, they will drop at least one battle. and not just drop like they kill 3 guys and lose. I mean, like they'll back out and be like, that's stupid. I got to restart and adequately go against this. Now, this is a team that can be countered with plenty of things, but it's kind of like the upper echelon of the STD team. STD meaning sometimes difficult, not what you're thinking of. It's a very important concept in Galaxy of Heroes when playing players that are, I hate to say this, but when playing players that are not exactly very well farmed in the brain cell department. It's a team that's entirely mechanic based and can be incredibly frustrating, especially if you have a Relic K2SO. I know a lot of you guys are not going to, but if that's an investment that you guys want to make for a chip or just for this team in general, fantastic. So this is definitely the bottom tier of what would be considered a backbone team, but also on the upside, it is a requirement for the Titty. So there is value there as well. Jedi Knight Luke, I mean, this is a pretty standard one. He usually gets pigeonholed into a JML team, but some people are predicting that Cal Kestis will kind of plug him out, and you can move him over to his own leadership or run him under Jedi Knight Revan and expand out those Jedi teams as they expand the total number of teams in Kyber 1 and stuff like that. But this team especially just gives you the ability to beat SOKRs and stuff like that if you don't have JML, but also the ability to spread your JML team into 2 teams if you don't find, a full JML plus Jedi Knight Luke plus Jedi Knight Revan, Hoda, Bastila, like a full team that requires the maximum comp of that build. It gives you backbone level control and backbone level offensive and defensive viability that you can break off of a JML if you need those extra teams. And as you guys are well aware, characters and players who are punching up, like if you're 6.6 and you're fighting the 9s, or if you're 2 and you're fighting the 5s, as far as million GP is concerned, you know that you need to be creative and maximize your teams as much as humanly possible. Aphra is one that's controversial because everyone thought she'd fall off after her Datacron was gone. Fortunately, that proved to not be the case. She's still a fantastic team. I'd say she probably slides in at it. If the entirety of the backbone is, S to F tier, Malgus is S tier, Radis is D tier. I don't think there's really an F tier backbone team. Starkiller is kind of A tier. Call it Mauls, maybe B tier. So if you do that, Aphra falls in probably at that B tier, probably at that Maul level, maybe a little bit better, maybe a little bit worse, depending on what counter you're going up against. Still has a Jabba counter viability. Calvin Awesome, actually, we did a podcast a couple days ago, and he mentioned that this is like the greatest Galactic Legend cleanup team in the entire world in 3v3, which is kind of funny. But definitely fantastic value, and they occasionally catch a good Datacron as well because you have a wide range of characters here. So, Grand Inquisitor, a team that most people don't have, but will eventually become more valuable as most players slowly start to farm up Reva. I would say if you're at like 270 to 200 to like 280 Reva shards, you should probably start farming the Inquisitors. And I know that's going to be controversial to guilds and stuff like that, but you can beat some Jedi teams. Once you get Reva, this team absolutely becomes ridiculously broken, but that's something that's not going to happen for a lot of people for a very long period of time. So it's not something I'm going to cover. Now we're going to start getting into the newer teams. Now, the ceremonial chopping of a team that we talked about earlier was going to be the Tuskens. I don't know why I threw the Tuskens in there. I threw them in there before we knew what they did, and they just kind of sat there, and I didn't talk about them. They just existed to exist. So you'll be happy to know that I ceremonially axed them. The newest team, and we did an entire video on the secret galactic legend that is Traya. Traya, Nihilus, Scion, Savage, and Talon are ridiculously broken. This is one of the most messed up teams in the entire game. It kind of falls under the Akbar principle that you don't see it on defense enough in the Erodium to Kyber 3 area that a lot of mid-game players, a lot of free-to-play players are struggling with. You don't see it a lot, so a lot of people are underprepared, but this team will absolutely destroy you if you are not paying attention. It will absolutely eat your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner, your booty hole. It will consume anything that you put in front of it. Yes, it's also frequently used by Kyber 2 and Kyber 1 players to beat Reva and stuff like that, but realistically, we're talking just pure defensive annihilation, pun intended. Actually, that wasn't an intended pun, that just kind of worked out, and then I threw the pun intended in there to sound like that was a premeditated joke, but I'm just naturally funny. So stupid, I'm sorry. But this team will just absolutely destroy anything you put in its way. Now, it remains to be seen how good Jedi Knight Cal Kestis is. I'm going to ceremonial. Blah, blah, blah. I'm going to put this here. I like how you can tell this is dated because Clone Wars Chewbacca is there as opposed to Tarful, because when I first put this on the tier list, it was obvious that he was probably going to fall into a backbone level team, but we didn't have the final Tarful character in the game, so I wasn't able to do that. This remains to be seen, but this kind of leads us into the next two new teams that are kind of making an appearance on this list for the very first time. We're talking about Zori. Zori is a Akbar effect level character, but at the highest degree. I know this is super dated, and not dated and that this team is not good anymore, because this team is still absolutely fantastically, unbelievably amazing and will destroy so much stuff on defense and really mess up your opponents if you're in the mid game, especially if you're a free-to-play player punching up. But I mean, this team has been good for so long, and then there was Datacrons that made it even better. But even without the like optimal Datacrons and stuff like that, this team is just absolutely is just a force to be reckoned with on defense. And I know it's going to kind of out of the way for most people. It's even out of the way for me, and I was farming Ray for a long period of time. But if this is a team that ever comes across your desk as something that you can potentially farm, I would absolutely step on it, because this is going to take your defensive front line to the next level and really throw a wrench in your opponent's plans and give you the opportunity to flex more stuff that you normally save for defense for offense, get better banners, punch through an extra zone and stuff like that. Last but not least, I'm going to do an entire video probably on Hondo Anaka, just because he's amazing. But the Dash Rendar Vandor Chewie L3 comp has been a standard for a long time. Throw an Enfys Nest for some days, some big damage, and some general viability if they can't figure out a way to annihilate it or do enough damage under its protection or under her protection to destroy her. And then Hondo Anaka is like I think Hondo Anaka is the best free-to-play character in the entire game. I'm not going to lie. I think I can count on, one toe the number of teams that I've just not absolutely destroyed with Hondo Anaka in some way or the other over the last like 6 months or whatever it's been. This team on defense or on offense, I mean, I don't use this team on offense. I kind of just use like a Hondo like steroid team where I just bring in a bunch of characters to help boost Hondo stats. Because like if you can get an armor Watt and then like some sort of leadership that gives him stats, Hondo Anaka will kill almost anything. I mean, that's the kind of shit I was doing against like Malgus. I never used Hondo's Datacron, obviously, because I don't have him at R7, but I could still fuck up a Malgus, if you do a Hondo steroid team on offense. But on defense, this team is going to, one, if you Omicron your dash, there's going to be the Vandor Chewie, like just no one's ever going to want to die. Enfys Nest is going to mess people up. You're going to have a great tank. And then Hondo Naka, if he ever gets to 30 to 50 stacks, is just going to start one-shotting people, and it's going to be a complete nightmare for everyone. So let me know what you think about the new additions. We'll do a couple more videos about the ever-changing landscape of the early game, mid game, because the definitions there have changed. We'll talk about some amendments to the auxiliary teams as well as kind of defining core for all of you guys. We'll have a big series coming up in the next week or so make sure you subscribe. Help us get 28,000 subscribers so that I can be happy, and there's no other reason, because subscribers don't do anything for you except for, make your ego better, and I guess if you hit 50K, you get like better sponsorship opportunities, but that's never going to happen playing Galaxy of Heroes, so we'll worry about 28,000 subscribers before we worry about 50. All right, guys, as always, I love you, and I'll see you later.